You're listening to the Sketchnote Army Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Rohde, the author of the Sketchnote Handbook and the Sketchnote Workbook, and this is the podcast where I chat with sketchnoters and visual thinkers and try to understand what makes them tick. Hey, are you looking for the ideal sketchbook for your sketchnoting practice? The Sketchnote Idea Book is the sketchbook designed for sketchnoters. Equipped with no bleed, no show-through paper, you can take almost any marker or pen you can throw at it. Get 10% off with code ARMY at airship.store. Hey everyone, it's Mike, and I'm here with Luke Kelvington. Luke, it's so good to have you on the show. Thanks for coming.
Oh, thank you for the invite, Mike. Appreciate it.
So we got connected through the Cleveland Guardians. We both have a connection through that, and learned about your sketchnoting skills, and you sent me samples, and I was like, oh, this is cool. We should have you on the show to talk a little bit about your experience and the way you look at it with the people who listen. So I'm just going to jump right into it. Why don't you tell us who you are and what you do, and then go right into, like, how did you end up in this place? Like, even go back to when you were a little kid. Were you drawing for your whole life? You know, was it a late development? I'm really curious to hear how it all fit into what you're doing now.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, I'm from Akron, Ohio, son of a third-generation mechanic. I'm pretty sure had my name been Earl Risk Kelvington IV, that's what I'd probably be doing. But I got into the Naval Academy in 2000 and joined in 2001. And I've been in the Navy ever since. So I'm a career naval officer, submariner. I'm on my fourth submarine. Wow. I'm the captain of the USS Pennsylvania Gold, which is a ballistic missile submarine out here in Bangor, Washington. Yeah, so as far as, as a kid, I always liked, drawing fonts. I would decorate the upper right-hand corner of my math homework and just different designs. And so I've always just enjoyed just doodling. Never, I was a rugby player. I was art was not always at the forefront of what I was doing. But I will say that I had a math teacher in seventh grade, and he would give us certificates if you get 100 on a test, and he would write out your name in calligraphy. And in seventh grade, I learned, I was like, I'm gonna learn how to do this. So I learned calligraphy in middle school, and so that and fonts has always been just something I've really enjoyed doing. And I will say that I've been challenged in the past by my mentors to make sure that I'm always doing something professionally with respect to journaling. And when COVID happened, and we were, I got into this, this space with the Cleveland Guardians, and then I watched your presentation, and I was like, wow, this is, it's just something I didn't even know I needed, and the simplicity of the messaging and how you were able to show, hey, as long as you can do these shapes, the idea is not art mantra. As long as you can do these simple shapes, you could really convey a message. And even if it's just with yourself in your own journal, trying to figure out how to better yourself or your people, I found it as, I got real excited about it, and started doing it. And what I found was I was listening to my leaders speak. So I was on an admiral staff, and so I started sketchnoting when he was giving his speeches. And what I found was, by sharing that with him after the fact and proving to him that his message was simple enough to be able to capture an imagery and not really, hard things to convey, that he was being very effective in his communication style. So my job as a leader on a submarine is to design people's decision space. And if I can clearly communicate that in different manners, and one of which is through art. So for instance, last week, I have these giant Post-it notes, and we'll talk about Newland pens later, but I have my Newland pens, and, I'll draw quotes, and, just simple designs. This week was the strength of the pack is the wolf, and the strength of the wolf is the pack, and I found on the Noun project this very simple drawing of a wolf, and, it's just the imagery as they come in. It's not just words on a page. It's got a little bit more to it, and a little bit of depth, just a little bit of shading makes it look and makes it pop and makes it something that I think really resonates. That Cleveland Guardian series, we've been exposed to a lot of amazing leaders, Dan Coyle, James Kerr, Jay Hennessy's just done a fantastic job of bringing these people together. And James Kerr, in his book Legacy, he says shrewd leaders invent a unique vocabulary of shorthand for communicating new cultural norms and standards using specific words, phrases, mottos, and mantras. And I would argue art is part of that. Then using metaphor, the leader brings the story to visceral life across as many channels as possible. And in that way, the language becomes the oxygen that sustains belief. And in this way, leaders rewrite the future. So using that metaphor and using the imagery, I think is a way to be very effective as a leader. With my crew, my message is very, I think, simple. It's to build trust, and then, break it into character and competency, something easily, there's something that can resonate with them. Choose growth, and then to use your best punch. And I've used that use your best punch in this boxing analogy now, and using some of the imagery from that to I think, I've only been in command for about 3 months, but I think starting to build a culture where that can that resonate. And then you can use other things like, what does it mean to be in someone's corner? As a coach, as a mentor, as someone that, is able to throw in the towel for you when you see that, they're struggling and they can't, they don't even know that they need the help. So, being able to just effectively use imagery in order to either help you figure out how you want to convey it. So like, I don't share all of my notes, with my guys and gals, but, making sure that it's a way for me to help frame, again, how do I give them the left and right boundaries, and then create that imagery to make sure that, we're heading in the right direction.
That's really cool. I'm really curious. You made a statement earlier. You said something about decision space. I would really like you to kind of expand a little on what is a decision space? And then secondarily, how are you, it sounds like you're kind of using this imagery as a way to frame or put boundaries on that decision space.
Yeah. So decision space, talk about the fact that, life is a choose your own adventure. And so as I get, 18 to 20 somethings, trying to make sure that we teach them what right looks like. So some of that is in either words or pictures. Other instances is actually showing them on the job training of what that really looks like. So the idea is as they're more junior, the constraining space is the left and right boundaries are smaller. So again, if you can either use imagery or figure out how you are going to frame your discussion with them, and you can work that out, what are the left and right boundaries that I want to convey, so that you can then, and after the fact, hey, did I clearly communicate that? Because honestly, when someone messes up, I'm a huge proponent of human error. I think that, we are going to make mistakes, and it happens all the time. I give them the example. I say, hey, on your phone, how often do you hit the wrong button? And you have to back or autocorrect, and that stuff happens in real life, in just your normal day-to-day processes. So, if we can accept that human error, because I think, again, our tendency is to run, hide, cover, and blame. That's kind of where we go. But how do we change that so that they feel safe enough to come in, tell you that they messed up, and then making sure that there's enough, of environment that's safe for where they can go ahead and admit those mistakes. So that's kind of what I'm talking about there with the decision space. And again, sometimes it's with words, sometimes again in your journal, it's a way to, how do I best convey this message to my people?
It almost seems like what you're trying to do, the way I read it, is they can't see inside your mind and what you're thinking, but you can use words and images and things to basically help each one of those individuals build that decision space in their mind, to know where the edges are and know, like, okay, I'm at the edge of, I need to talk to somebody before I proceed with this, or this doesn't feel right. I need to talk to someone and make sure, like, something feels hinky about this. I better check. Like, I'm imagining you're sort of helping them to build it for themselves, so they can, because then that makes them self-sufficient. And then I guess the second thing is by making that safe environment where they can say, hey, Captain, I screwed up. I did this. They're more likely to learn from it, right? If they feel like they're going to get beat up over it, then that encourages people not to tell you. And then you can have something that can be a runaway problem that could build into some huge problem, right? You want to catch it early before it becomes out of control, I would think.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think being able to look at yourself first. Hey, did I give you the time, the tools, the training, to do it right? And when they see you with the humility to say, hey, I'm going to look at myself first before I go and try to put any kind of blame on you, I think that helps to build that psychologically safe space to make sure that they do come forward. Because in my world, troubleshooting human error in a very technical problem is, if you put the wrong number in, it's we need to know that. So.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's really interesting, the way you're using it in that. Now, you mentioned too that you do journaling. Can you tell a little bit of detail about, like, how you've integrated, I guess, visualization of some kind? Maybe it's rises to the level of sketchnoting in your own journaling practice, and how has that helped you?
Yeah, so I will, a lot of times when maybe even in social media, I'll see something like Adam Grant puts out a quote, so I'll snap that. And then later on, I'll take that quote and then go into my notes and try to, make it something that sticks, right? I mean, you want to make it so that it's something that's sticky. And then, once you kind of have that confidence, sharing that with others. I was watching, I'm a SEC football fan, and I was watching SEC Media Day a couple of weeks ago, and Kirby Smart was talking, and then Nick Saban, and I was like, holy smokes, this is a leadership 101. I need to capture some of this stuff. So, capturing it quickly, we can go into some of the advice stuff later, but, make sure that you're able to make some, shorthand notes off to the side. So then you can kind of figure out how do I want to present this, in a clear manner that I want to capture and then share in the future. So, I've got my journals that are, they're chronological, but I'll put in the front of those journals, like a page number that, with the something I want to make sure I go back to. And and it's something that now it's sticky, it's there, it's an image. And I can tell you, I'm not I do not have a photographic memory, but I can see, an image on a page, and then I can go back to it and say, okay, this is, it's going to be something I can go back and say, hey, this is going to be something I want to apply to this situation, because, as Mark Twain says, right, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And so being able to go back to those and say, hey, this is an effective message that I now can then share with my people. So I've been collecting quotes and reading books and putting those things together for really the last 18 years of my career. And for this moment to be able to, like, pour the stuff out on my people.
That's cool. So it does seem like the things I take away from that are knowledge and insight can come from any place, right? You're watching SEC Media Day, you're getting stuff from, head coaches of these football teams who are leaders, right? They have to deal with leadership. So even like kids and other people can bring you that. So being aware that knowledge can come from any place and to be ready. So that was one message. And then the second message is when you place it in your journals that you sort of have created an index so you can find it again quickly, because you have a feeling like, this might be valuable for my team in the future. I need to be able to quick reference that thing and pull it back. And then the third thing was interesting too, is you said you can see it in your mind. Like that's the way, like the challenge for me is I could see it in my mind and I know I did that thing. And then, I probably need to work on my organization of my books so that I can find stuff more easily. Maybe they need to be digitized. I don't know, but I can definitely I can close my eyes and imagine that sketch note that I did. And a lot of times the where and when and details all around it. Now finding it in the book is the challenge. So that's my thing that I got to deal with. But
this episode of the Sketchnote Army Podcast is brought to you by Concepts, a perfect tool for sketchnoting, available on iOS, Windows, and Android. Concepts' infinite canvas lets you sketchnote in a defined area while still enjoying infinite space around it to write a quick note, scribble an idea, or keep pre-drawn visual elements handy for when you need the most. The infinite canvas lets you stretch out and work without worrying if you'll run out of space. And when combined with powerful vector drawing that offers high resolution output and complete brush and stroke control, you have a tool that's perfect for sketchnoting. Search Concepts in your favorite app store to give it a try.
When we talk about tools, because of the nature of my job, I typically don't have a cell phone. I don't have much when it comes to digital. So a lot of what I have to do is just on pen and paper, so I have not gotten into, I recently did buy the Surface Pen to try this stuff out, the digital world, but a lot of times it's just not something that I can take with me.
Yeah, exactly. So that, I think that feels like a real natural place to shift into the tools you do use. Are there specific pens that you like when you do journaling? Are there certain books that you like? You talked about big sticky notes and Neuland markers. So talk a little bit about kind of the tools you use and why you like them.
Yeah, so I use for the most part the journaling. I'll just use the normal, just regular, notebook, or I do have the Sketchnote notebook as well.
Oh, cool, nice.
So I have one that I'm usually in a chronological, order going through, and then I have a couple others where I'm practicing. So I got the vocablo icons from Newland, so you can kind of go through and practice the different emotions. I even have a little book that it's my daughter's book. It's how to draw, and it's just simple little things. So working on that inventory of icons is really, I think, one of the things that's helpful to have kind of a separate journal that I build that inventory and that muscle memory of what those, just like you say, those simple shapes that then you just add a little bit of depth, and it just really it pops. I don't know how to better describe it, but yeah, I love the Newland pens, and I like the fact that I can reload them, and and the fact they don't bleed through the paper. I think that's the other piece of it. On a day-to-day, I just have like a ballpoint tool as one of my go-tos, in my uniform, because the Newlands don't have an easy way to, kind of stuff it in my uniform there.
Yeah.
But like I said, when it comes to, I do it for sermons too. So every Sunday, I've got a little sketch note of whatever that sermon was. But off to the side, as he's saying his outline, I'm putting that on a separate piece of paper just to kind of sketch out. Okay, this is what it was, and then I've done a couple of your workshops, talking about different layouts, like what's going to fit best for this particular sermon, and making sure that I, and you're going to make mistakes. There's, you just, especially if you're using pen and paper, but figuring out inventive ways to hide those mistakes is always a fun challenge as well. and then a lot of times I'll snap a picture of it and share it with, my mom or, just being willing to share that stuff and get some feedback, and it seems to resonate pretty well with others. When it comes to simple icons, the Noun project is definitely an easy one, and honestly, I'm also not shy about tracing an outline of it. I'll put the phone behind it and trace the outline, and
that's a good idea.
As I'm working on trying to build the repertoire of icons, but sometimes I just can't get the proportions right, so I'll just throw it behind there and trace it through, and it still looks pretty good. And then when I was in my job, in my previous job on that admiral staff, I just had 5x8 note cards, and that would be my method of capturing those things, especially if I wanted to share them with him.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like 5x8 note cards, I've got a big stack of them. Well, I got smaller ones right here. I took to a conference years ago. Basically, we said, well, here's what we need, and I wanted 5x8 cardstock. So they got 8.5 by 11, cut it in half, and handed it out to all the students in that workshop in person. I was in Philly, and they had all these leftover cards. So I took them and I was like, I really like these. These are really nice. It's kind of a nice, you don't feel too precious about it. If you screw it up, you just recycle it, start with another one, and it's sort of, it's independent, so you can kind of move it around. And so that's kind of cool that you use that. So when you're on the boat, are you able to take, sounds like you don't take technology, so you would take paper and pen or something, or do you take anything when you go on the boat, or does it pretty much get left behind?
I'll take my pen and paper, nice. in my journal. Yeah. So I'll again, I use it as a leadership journal, capture things, obviously nothing classified, but
sure. Yeah.
But yeah, just building on those lessons and making sure that, again, as I'm trying to visualize how I want to present information, one of the easy ways to do that is I'm convinced that if I can make it a simple image, then if I can communicate that image with words, then I think I'm winning there to be able to build what that, bringing that story to visceral life, like James Kerr says.
There's been a lot of talk about story too. Like if you can, like that we as people, if we see or hear a story, it becomes, if it's well done, it can be almost as though we experienced it personally. So that visceral life is actually, like a real thing. Like you can almost imagine, like in movies you've seen, if you really resonate with it, it could feel as though you experienced that yourself, and you can learn lessons from those experiences. Like, don't do that. That's probably, this doesn't feel right. Like you're building knowledge from that. So when you take your journals on the boat, do your crew see that? What do they think? Like, because I saw when you put it up on the screen, it's like got stickers all over it, and looks kind of cool. Like, they're like, oh man, he's carrying a notebook. Does that seem unusual to them? Do they say anything to you about it, or how do they react to that, if at all? Maybe they don't.
I think that when I do show them the images, I think they do enjoy it, but it is pretty typical for senior officers to carry around at least some level of a notebook.
Okay.
But to me, it's teaching them that capturing that professional journal that you're learning, and making sure you're capturing these lessons, because people learn lessons from good leaders, and they also learn them from poor leaders too. So making sure that even you capture both the good and the bad, because you can say, well, I really don't want to do it that way.
Right.
So when they get in charge, and making sure that they're taking things with them. The Navy is not something that is always a career for everyone, but making sure that those lessons that you learn, you've got something to be able to, after the fact, digest. My engineer tour was a very challenging tour. It was over 3 years, and but the notes that I took during that tour, I was able to then really digest. I ended up writing an article and getting it published in the Naval Institute proceedings. But I would have not been able to really digest that tour and glean all those lessons if I hadn't captured those, throughout the tour. Just those little nuggets, things I wanted to do better, things I learned. Yeah.
It seems to me too, the other lesson I take away from what you're just talking about is, and this probably from the beginning too, is this idea of, you can't just, at the end of 3 years, like go back and reflect on everything and take every learning, because you're going to forget a lot of it. So it's really important that you are documenting this stuff as it's happening in little micro chunks and letting it build over time. So you're building this experience, and it's a way of capturing like your lessons, because, as much as you'd love to think you can go back after 3 years and reflect, and you could draw some meaning, but having that reference would be huge. So that would be an encouragement for those listening or watching to maybe start carrying a book around that they document stuff in the way that you do, as a valuable professional tool.
And sometimes it can just either be a small image or just a few words, and that'll trigger, that event, so that you can make sure, you can capture it and use it in the future.
So we've covered your life story. We've covered tools. We're at the point where I would love to hear your encouragement and tips. So the way I frame it is, someone's listening, watching, their visualization person of some kind, and maybe they feel like they're in a rut, or they just need some encouragement. What would you tell that person in 3 tips, or you can go beyond 3 if you want to?
Yeah, I think the first is, to practice, building those icons so that, later when you're stuck, you can open up that other journal and take a look at those items. I would encourage them to, take courses kind of like what you've offered, just to give them a little bit more courage or a little bit more just tools.
Confidence, maybe. Yeah.
Confidence. Yeah. Confidence is the word I'm looking for there. That it is, just simple images that can really resonate with just a little bit of practice. But then I think also, using those tools like the Noun Project and not being afraid to every once in a while trace it out if it's, to make it look good. I think sharing it with friends has been something that I've really enjoyed, and letting them give you a little bit of feedback. And I think that will give them some more encouragement that it's something that people enjoy. And then it's okay to wait, I think, to be inspired. My journals are not full. Every page doesn't have images on it, right? So making sure that you keep the practice of journaling, and even if it's just the story and things that happen, and then as the inspiration comes and that you say, hey, this is something I really want to capture with an image, making sure that you keep that muscle memory of carrying that notebook around, and then that way when the, like I said the other day, watching that SEC media day, it was like, wow, I need to capture this. And I think this would be something that I could then share with friends, and we could get a conversation going. And, it's sometimes, I move a lot. So connecting with others, if you send them an image, and say, hey, let's talk about this. This is really exciting. This is something I just heard. It can help build that conversation. And so it's not just well, how you doing? Oh, I'm doing fine. He's good. So it's not just the family stuff, but
go
it's
a little
also
deeper.
Yeah.
Cool. That's really cool. I love those tips. Thanks for sharing those. Well, you're probably on a boat some part of the time, and maybe you don't really have social media stuff. Is there anywhere you would send people to learn more about you, or is there anything online that they can even find? Is there anything that we can send people to?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way, like professionally, to reach out to me. I do have a couple articles that I've written in the U.S. Naval Institute proceedings. So they can find a couple pretty, lessons there that I've captured. But yeah, other than that, my bio is on the Submarine Pacific Fleet website if they really want to see that. But yeah.
Cool. Well,
Yeah.
we'll make sure and get a link to your LinkedIn. We'll put that in the show notes, and maybe we can have you find links to your articles. So if people want to read those, we can include those in the show notes too. But hey, Luke, this has been great. It's really been fun to hear. Like, when I started this podcast, I never thought that I'd, have a commander of a submarine. I'm talking about sketchnoting. Just the world is crazy. You just never know where it's going to lead.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm blessed to have been part of that Cleveland Guardians speaker series, to get to know some of the awesome people like you, Mike, and yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Well, thanks, Luke. We appreciate you. Thanks for your service, and for everyone who's watching and listening. This will be another episode of the Sketchnote Army Podcast. Until the next episode, talk to you soon.
The Sketchnote Army Podcast was created by me, Mike Rohde, and brought to you by Rohdesign Studios. It's produced and edited by Alec Polianis of Amp Creative Studios. The theme music was created by John Schiedermeyer. To support the creation of this show, I invite you to buy one of my books, the Sketchnote Handbook or the Sketchnote Workbook. You can find the books on Amazon, or go to peachpit.com and use the code ROHDE40 for 40% off. Please share this podcast with other visual thinking friends, and be sure to leave a nice rating on iTunes or your favorite podcast listening app so others can find the show.